Emotional Connection: Representation of Emotions in Young Adult Literature by Bettina Kamerling Mebawe.
Overview or the introduction of this video lesson. Contemporary Adolescent Literature in Culture, The Emergent Adult by Mary Helton and Maria Nikolaeva investigate the moral, ideological, and literary landscape in fiction and other cultural artifacts geared toward young adults and offers a wide spectrum of critical viewpoints. The book investigates how authors create their adolescent protagonists as awkward, alienated, rebellious, and unhappy such that the young adult becomes a representation of broader political and social issues. In connection thereto, in Chapter 8, The Emotional Connection, Representation of Emotion in Young Adult Literature by Bettina Kamerling-Mebawe discusses the three adolescent novels, Ich ganz cool, I very cool 1992 by Kirsten Boye, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime 2003 by Mark Haddon, and Tenderness 1998 by Robert Cormier. They portray unique characterization of the protagonist's perspective and emphasize the four stages of empathy such as global empathy, egocentric empathy, empathy of another's feeling, and empathy for another's life conditions as a realm of emotional competence. Furthermore, this chapter arose multi-perspectivity and interdisciplinary that stimulate readers to reflect upon the protagonist's emotional development and to transfer this learning process to their everyday life experiences.
What does emotional turn mean? Based from the emotional connection, representation of emotions in young adult literature, the author discusses the several disciplines involves cognitive psychology, philosophy, pedagogy, linguistics, neuroscience, and literary studies that can be associated to emotional turn. Emotional turn is the changes or shift of emotions that can be acquired by a person through environment that she or he belongs, situations, and other person's life that affects his or her perspectives.
Move on to another questions on emotional connection, representation of emotion in young adult literature. The question is, how do authors possess and establish in their literary works, and how does such impact readers? So based on my analysis to what I have read, the three adolescent novels, namely Ich ganz cool or The I Very Cool that was published in 1992 by Kirsten Bowie, next The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime 2003 by Mark Haddon, and Tenderness 1998 by Robert Cormier. They showcase the unique characteristic of the protagonist stories that impact the readers and create an emotional competence. So they at first establish the protagonist character as a way of antagonist, which the readers felt antipathy and contradiction to what the protagonist's actions. However, at the climax of the resolution of the novels, the readers can draw changes of emotions and empathy to really understand the situations and conditions that protagonists have. Next question is, how do authors express emotions in their works? So they express multi-perspectivity, in which when we talk about multi-perspectivity, it is the change of perspective to understand other points of view towards the emotions of other people that the protagonist has. So the author uses narrative techniques that gives the readers ambiguities, but at the end of the novel, the readers can draw clear perspective and empathy over sympathy to the protagonist's stories.
Every character has their own description, and they have their own characterization, which made their role special and different from others. It is said that emotion is significant to a character's description and characterization, which is true. Emotions are significant to a character's description and characterization
because it is the factor that gives meaning to a role of a certain character. The emotions of every character add color to a story, and it reveals how a character reacts in a certain situation, which helps the reader determine their insights. Through the emotions shown by a character, reader can easily connect and attach themselves to the life of the character in the story.
How can emotional connection can be achieved? Emotional connection can be achieved through the use of various narrative strategies that communicate emotions and cause the reader's attitude toward the protagonist to shift. These narrative strategies are elements that writers use to give their writing depth, convey the character's feelings, and evoke emotion within the readers. One of the most commonly used narrative strategies is the selection of a first-person narrator who presents the respective story from a constrained point of view. Another example is epiphany, which is the intuitive grasp of reality or a sudden realization of the character's attitude towards something. Narrative strategies are critical in developing and achieving emotional connection because they can also develop within the reader's ability to empathize and sympathize. In one of the stories presented by Bettina Kamerling Maybawe, entitled Tenderness, written by Robert Cormier, the author used multiple perspectives in which the story was told by two narrators, the first person and third person narratives. This helps readers to understand other people's point of view, wherein they will be pushed to look at different angles of a given situation or event.
The summary. Since the start of the 21st century, there has been an emotional turn in cultural studies due to the recently awakened interest in the portrayal of emotions in literature, the fine arts, media, and other cultural objects. This process involves several academic fields including cognitive, psychology, philosophy, pedagogy, linguistics, neuroscience, and literary studies. The phenomenon of empathy is a key factor in the study of emotions, a term coined by the American psychologist Edward Bradford Titchener in 1909. The empathy was translated as compassion. According to American scholars, Hastings, Zahn Waxler, and McShane classify the term empathy as the ability to understand another's perspective and recognition of one's intuitive and emotional reaction. Empathy combines affective, cognitive, and physiological processes. The author uses three adolescent novels titled Each Gun School by Kirsten Boy, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haydon, and Tenderness by Robert Cormier. The protagonists of these three novels have one important feature in common. They are not able to have empathy for people. In 2003, Fugazi, an Italian neuroscientist, discovered mirror neurons that can be acquired in a complex process. It has four stages in the acquisition process: the global empathy, egocentric empathy, empathy for feelings, and empathy for another's life condition. This belongs to the realm of emotional competence. There are narrative strategies used in the novels. Multi-perspectivity is a narrative strategy that refers to the change of perspectives that demand the ability to understand other people's points of view. To sum up, the three novels by Boy, Haydon, and Cormier are benchmark in the history of young adult fiction. The author used complex narrative strategies to express emotions and provoke changes in the reader's attitude towards the protagonist. When reading novels, readers will be confronted with a cognitive challenge not only to have empathy for another's feelings, but also develop empathy for another's life conditions.